I always tell everybody, hey, number one, I've seen literal train wrecks, so your finances are going to be fine. And just like in the triage for an MCI, we will start at the very beginning and we'll break it down as simple steps, and we'll do one step at a time until we get things done and back on track.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ignition Path podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Goodknight, and I am so happy to tell you about my guest today. Chris Harcksen-Lucero she comes from somewhat of the same cloth as me. She's actually a full-time flight paramedic and out in the California area. So we had a wonderful introductory meeting where we really talked shop about mental health in the first responder and being an entrepreneur. And Chris is actually going to be on both of my podcasts, but right now we're going to focus on the Ignition Path podcast because I want to talk all about her entrepreneurial path. And Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself and say hi to everybody and tell us a little bit about what you do and what your path was getting through this segment of your life into this entrepreneurial area.
Well, thanks for having me on. I am both a flight paramedic and a financial coach. Those are the two paths that I've picked. And the first one kind of ended up leading me down to the second one. It's kind of an interesting story that a lot of people might be able to relate. I was in my early 40s, found myself kind of going through a divorce, and realized that, during that time that I needed to make some really good decisions, and realized some of those poor decisions that I had made along the way by not saving enough early on. I had about, I think it was like $5,000 in my 401k. I wasn't even vested at the time, and kind of like starting over again, because the job is not only mentally but physically demanding. I constantly worried about what would happen if I got hurt, if I lost my profession, if I couldn't do my job. How was I going to take care of, a family? Now I have two boys and I am a single mom. So I had a lot of that scarcity mindset around money, and just found myself, bouncing back, because I do have a passion for helping others. That's why, of course, I picked the profession that I'm in. But I also have a passion for helping my fellow first responders, frontline workers, by I've always been involved in peer support. And then I found that I was able to recover, come back, build financial resiliency. And I just wanted to help other, people in this line of work do the same thing with building the financial resiliency and maybe not have to have so many dips along their career path that I had.
Right.
And this is just one way I could give back, because for me, going back to college to become a therapist was not going to happen.
Right. I know exactly what you're saying. And that's kind of, it's so funny. Like I said, so my podcast, when I'm done doing my podcast, I always see how much my guest talks and how much I talk. I get a little report. And I like to try to keep it 60-40 when someone comes on my podcast, but we have so much in common. It probably will be like 50-50 this time. And I hope to God it's not more than that, because I really want to highlight you on our Ignition podcast platform and, let people know what you do, that it's above and beyond first responders. But that's why we're going to have you on the Elevate podcast as well, because then we'll get into the mental health side because that's actually on another side of what I do. I've built a first responder mental health awareness webinar and program. And one of my modules is the financial module, because finances 100% absolutely play a factor in the overall mental health of a first responder. If they're not financially fit, then they come home and they're grumpy and they're from their job. And then someone chimes in about not being able to go to the store tonight because we haven't gotten paid yet, because we're living paycheck to paycheck in this horrible world of first responder paying. The pay and the first responder is horrible, but we don't do it for that reason. We do it to save lives. So it's one of those things where I've struggled financially. It's put a burden on my family, on myself, on my wife, on my kids. Luckily we were able to make ends meet through weird alternative ways, but and we've done almost everything that we wanted to do except for, buy the yacht. So, so it's one of those things where I can really relate to what you're doing and appreciate what you do for the first responders. And I'm sure that's where you got started. So how did it come about when you saw that there was a missing piece that you knew a lot about, and to start your business? Was it awkward starting to talk about financial stuff with coworkers? Was that your first clients? Like, how did you transition from just being the person that knows about finances and talking to your coworkers to actually building a business on this and now having a financial planning business with this?
Well, I'll tell you. So first, so I was going, let's just go back to, I now moved forward in life. I'm remarried now, and I was going to be getting married to my husband. And we've been married 9 years now. And when we were coming together, I had lost so much during my divorce. And I had a lot of baggage from that, right? Just the emotional baggage. So when we were going to get married and combine finances and I'm starting over, I was like, okay, I am not going to lose everything again. I'm not, had this trust issues around starting over with money, combining. And at church, they were offering Financial Peace University, which is, for a lot
Dave
of people
Ramsey.
know, Dave Ramsey, right?
I've been through
So
it.
they were offering the program, and I was like, you know what? We're going to go there and we're going to see what this is all about, because we as first responders can talk about death and dying, right? We deal with death and dying. We can talk about hard things, but sometimes money can still be, there's a lot of emotional things around it, right? So we took FPU. It was great. Neither one of us had debt coming into our relationship, thank goodness, at that point in our lives. My husband was widowed, and so he came with a whole different set of tools and things. And so that brought us together. We started budgeting. I always knew numbers, always, but we started using not the Dave Ramsey every dollar. We actually started using the You Need a Budget, YNAB. Is very popular, which I still use and still love and promote that budgeting program. And it was just like, it just came naturally. And I'm like, life just got easier. The conversations got easier. And along the way, somewhere right around COVID, a little bit before COVID, I'm like watching something, and Dave Ramsey did their, master training. And I'm like, wait a minute, you mean there's a program where, because I always wanted to come and find every first responder. I don't know any first responder that doesn't have a second job of something that you do on the side, right? Because we have a lot of time off. There you go.
I
See?
have
So
four
we have
second
a lot of
jobs.
time off and on. And
Yeah.
sometimes, you're always looking for something else that's different.
Yep.
And this kind of like, this was a way, like I said, I always did the peer support, and I loved helping coworkers. Now, did I start wanting to talk to coworkers about money as a coach? No. I've always talked openly about money in general, because I've always been a proponent of, don't work too much overtime. It contributes to burnout. It contributes to your stress and all those things. But that came more from a peer support type of person in that role. When I first started getting clients, I avoided coworkers. I didn't tell anybody I was even coaching at first, because if we're hard asses, we don't trust anybody. We, are very critical. It's one of our downfalls in the fact that we don't want to ask for help, right? We're the helpers. We don't ask for help. So I was like not going to share this side of anything with my coworkers or anybody or first responders. I was like tight-lipped. But as time went on and I became more successful and I really enjoyed, like, first I was dabbling. Do I want to go full force? Do I want to really do this thing? The more I started doing it, and I started just really getting like great rewards, helping someone where I say, I'm not going to get a hernia, I'm not going to break my back, and I'm not going to have
Right.
another critical incident, right? You don't get critical incident helping somebody with their money. So I'm just like, this is great. Well, now the conversations at work and so with some coworkers started to change a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready to take on my own people. So this last year and a half out of the 4 years, I've been transitioning to, okay, I want to help first responders build that resiliency, that now it's so important, all the things. And so I'm doing more with wellness programs, working with other first responders departments, getting into more of that realm, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's such a big factor in even in my course that I created for first responder resilience, because like you mentioned, I wear several hats. I'm a paramedic, I'm also a respiratory therapist. I don't actively do clinical respiratory therapy anymore, but I keep my licensure. And I'm also an educator inside of my department, kind of like you are. I'm going to be on the peer support team soon. I'm going through the classes to get there because of my own path and my struggles that I had a few years ago, which I call my blind side, because all of a sudden one day it was just like the walls came down on me and I reached up my hand. I said, I need help. And luckily I had a mentor that didn't shun
Amen.
it, that didn't poo-poo it. She came to my home 45 minutes after I made the call, and we made a plan for me, and I was back on duty within a week with a lot better plan for myself and my mental health. And it was one of those things where I urge anybody listening to this, whether you're an entrepreneur or a first responder, if you have mental health don't issues that you are having problems with, don't hesitate to raise your hand. There's all kinds of commercials in our local area about beat the stigma for mental health in general. And there's more and more conversation in the first responder world about beating the stigma. And the stigma is we don't talk about Bruno, right? So we need to talk about Bruno, like straight up. We need to talk about Bruno and we need to talk about Bruno in the beginning of our career and not at the end or in the middle where we're having crisis. So, with that being said, one of the things that I applaud you for is making that transition. I've made the transition to get out of one of my 4 jobs that I have. I'm a full-time paramedic. I'm an educator inside of my paramedic system. And I'm also a handyman where I do jobs on the side all the time and I beat my body up, right? Well, I'm
Mhm.
also a voiceover actor, as we discussed too. And I do all kinds of stuff in the voiceover actor world. And that led me into podcasting. Now, podcasting has opened the doors to, one, help my fellow first responders with mental health, because I have a mental health podcast called Elevate, shameless plug, E11EPATE. So the notes will be in the bottom. And then I also am an entrepreneur, old enough since I was 12 years old, pushing a lawnmower, have my own businesses. So I'm now blending all of that. And now I'm helping other first responders who want to start a podcast. I'm a podcast coach. I'm a podcast producer. I do that as my side job to get me away from swinging a hammer and busting up my shoulders anymore. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries on these things, right? I've had 1 knee surgery that was in first responder world. I had 2 knee surgeries in high school from football. So I'm just a wreck, right? I'm a physical wreck that I just know that if I can make it through my career of being a paramedic, which is hard to do anyhow because of the beating and banging and lifting and all that stuff, that I don't want to just add to it by doing more medical stuff and having those traumas, or doing physical work like construction to beat my body up. So I created my entrepreneurial path and the ignition path to help people not beat up my body, but help people elevate their business, right? And
Mhm.
get them to a point where they can feel good about getting leads and stuff like that. So we're very much similar. You're just doing it on the financial side and I'm doing it on the podcasting side and getting people to help grow their business. And we've talked about that. And so my next question for you is when it comes to how far away are you from retirement? Are you to the point now where your financial planning business is now taking over what you can do for retirement? Or are you like me? I'm holding on until I get my full pension, and then I'll have this nice little path of business on the backside while I'm doing it on my off days.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. When I first started my career, I was 19 and I looked really young on top of it. And everybody would always say, their nice way of asking how old you are. They're like, how long you been doing this? Right now, I've been in this line of work for 37 years. Everybody that I run into that still sees me and knows me, because your communities, you get to know people. They're like, how much longer are you going to keep doing this?
I
I'm
know
supposed to
those
bring out
people.
here now,
I'm
right?
not, they haven't started asking me yet but I'm getting close. So
Yeah. So I get to hear both sides of things. And the funny part is so that was honestly, that was one of the deep fears of even in the career. So my line of work always was no pensions, always a 401k, and when I first started, 401ks were newer and you're like, what is that? And then I put my retirement plan into my ex-husband. He was a firefighter and we had an almond ranch and we were, it was going to be his career. And then my career was just the job. That's why I only had 5,000 in my 401k at the time when I was starting to fly, because the plan for the future was completely different. Well, when that all crumbled and starting again, I'm like, okay, I've got to rethink this. I've got to put in as much as I can now. The one thing you learn is you can't make up for time with
Right.
compound interest, right?
It's impossible.
So I'm always telling everybody, start as soon as you can. I don't care if it's a little bit, just do something, right? Now I'm dumping as much as I can in. So it's twofold. One, I want to make it to 59 and a half, right? So I can, my 401k take out time. Physically, I'm doing good. I mean, even though I've had a couple different hernia surgeries and everything, I'm doing pretty good mentally. I've bounced back from different critical incidences. But so then I started the coaching. Well, I love coaching, but gosh, I still love the job, right?
Right. Oh, I'm
So
right there with you.
as I'm putting the two together, I'm like, okay, the more I keep saying, the more coaching I get, okay, if I get enough coaching, how much do I need to replace my other job? Part of me is like, well, maybe I'll just go part-time so I can just dabble in, the best sides of EMS, right? And I don't know, I would love to, and now that I'm coaching, I get when people say, I'm going to do this for a long time, not forever, right? I want to fully retire at some point. But now I'm like, oh, I can definitely see myself doing coaching for a long time,
Right. Yeah.
not,
It
into
doesn't beat
my
up your
60s.
body, and like you said, it
Right.
does, you don't have you shouldn't have critical incidences from talking about people with their money unless you piss them off and they start fighting you or something. But
Yeah.
like, hopefully, I'm not saying, I've seen some, you and I both have seen some weird stuff, so we never want to say, the first responder world will never say never, right?
No,
Because you
no.
never
And
know what's around the corner.
you never say you've seen it all. I
No,
go, I never will say I've seen it
no, I've
all
seen a lot.
because
I've seen a lot, done a
I
lot.
don't need that challenge. I don't
Yep.
need that
You know,
challenge.
some weird
But
stuff. I've not seen it all, that's for sure.
But
So
that's the awesome side about the coaching side of things, because money is, like I said, it is very personal. It kind of weaves its little fingers into everything that we do. And I always tell everybody, hey, number one, I've seen literal train wrecks, so your finances are going to be fine.
yeah,
you
little actual
know,
Rex.
and just like in the triage for an MCI, we will start at the very beginning and we'll break it down as simple steps, and we'll do one step at a time until we get things done and back on track, right? And I also treat it with a full level of, for me, privacy. I treat my financial coaching relationship with clients the same way I do with peer
Absolutely.
support. People
Oh,
can disclose that they work with me as much as they want, but I don't disclose that I work with anybody,
it's like HIPAA for the
until.
financial. Yeah, like our focus on HIPAA and integrity when it comes to that is unbeknownst, right? It should be. And if
Right.
you live our first responder life to the fullest, you don't even talk to your spouse about certain things in our world, right?
No.
You may say, I had a rough day, or I had a rough situation, but you're not giving details out about stuff to jeopardize any relationships. And my wife's a nurse, and she's the same way. We've even I had a neighbor who called me up one time and asked a question about her daughter, and it shocked me, right? Because I was like, oh my gosh, I went to my wife, and this was just neighborly. I said, did you know blankety blank blank? And she's like, where did you find that out at? And I'm like, uh-oh, you know all about this. Because, oh, okay, I'll shut up. It was like we literally just instantly backed up and just did not talk about it because we didn't want to infringe, on any of the
No.
medical side of stuff. So we just shut down. So, that's great that you do that and you offer those services. Now, do you specifically only work with first responders, or do you kind of spread your wings with anybody as well? But you like first responders more, right?
You know what? I want to help my own people, and this is a way I could contribute back in that way. So I love working with first responders, frontline workers, but I do work with other clients because in the beginning I got Ramsey referrals, that kind of a thing.
Oh,
People
yeah, yeah.
coming to me. People have an instant connection, trustworthiness, and they can see that early on, that kind of level of respect and everything. But of course, anybody who's ready to get on track and wants to deal with it. Of course, any high stress job, high stress careers, there's certain characteristics that we all kind of exhibit when it comes to our money.
Yeah.
One big thing, well, two, is we have two big issues that I deal with: the overtime trap and reward spending. Those are two things that either they're high earners or they have the potential. With the first responder frontline worker, all they can do is, oh, how many times have you heard? It's just one overtime shift. It's just two overtime shifts to pay for the car, the RV, the boat, you name it, right? And so overtime it's a trap because sometimes we get ourselves locked into committed because somebody's like, oh, you work 8 days a month. Okay, those are 8 24-hour days.
Right.
People put that in their mind as 8 8-hour days. They don't realize
Don't realize it.
it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner and
Yep.
your sleeping time in one
And
shift.
yeah,
And
and
that
getting up in the
means
middle of the night. Yeah.
and when I get off duty, I don't necessarily get off duty on time. And if I do, I'm not necessarily in a position to go do a bunch of things as soon as I get off duty, right? It takes up more than just one day
Yeah.
compared to everybody else, right? And so people are always like, well, just pick up one overtime shift, one or more overtime shift. And that's fine to get to get something extra in your life, but to do that on a daily basis for your regular living, for your regular wants, your basic needs,
Right.
that's kind of crazy because again, you are increasing all those other stress hormones and all the other things, and that can contribute to, your downfall, especially if overtime dries up or mentally you're like, I can't take it. I need a break, right?
Right, right, exactly.
That's huge.
It's funny that you mentioned the overtime trap because I did a little research before we got on our call, and this is Chris's if you're okay with me sharing this,
Oh, yes, Chris.
this is Chris's free guide for breaking free from the overtime trap. So you can come to her website. I'll have this link in the bio, of course, and in the description. You can come here. You can get her free guide on avoiding the overtime trap. So things like that, and that can help us slide into a conversation about what you offer, what your services do, how you start off. I do know that I saw on something else that you have a 30-minute consultation call for people, and we'll put that link in there too. Whatever you want me to put in, we'll do. But yeah, talk to a little bit about this Beyond the Numbers is the name of your company, of course, but this free guide. Talk a little bit about that, and then how people can reach out to you, and how you start the process of getting to know more.
So the overtime trap it's pretty much exactly what I was saying, that I've used it as a way of purchasing and getting things. Usually it's not just our needs, right? Our shelter, the basic car, the food, those kind of things. It's for all the extra things when I say the reward spending, because we as first responders do see a lot, hear a lot, that whole taste, touch, smell, that all the stressors, right, in this profession. So when we do that and we're gone from our families during holidays and baseball games and just all different types of things, right? So we end up doing things like, hey, I've got to show what I'm doing is worth it. So a lot of times we do reward spending. We buy the bigger truck, the fancier thing. And we justify it by saying, I just need to work one overtime shift. And again, that's fine in the beginning, but after a while, if you're doing that for 5 years, every single month, it kind of wears on, with the average car payment. So what the tips are when trying to break your overtime trap is, first is living within your means. What's your basic paycheck? What's the basic paycheck that you're bringing home? That's what we're going to build a minimum budget off of. And that way, then we're kind of starting, what do we have to give up, or what do we need to add additional things to change our situation? And it just gives us that guide just gives a step-by-step on breaking down where am I at? Am I in the trap? What does it look like? And then there's some tips on how to get out of that trap, how to break that, because you can do it for a while, but that's not an existence when you've been in the profession for a really, really long time.
Right.
There are people that really want to keep up doing that. I don't do it. That's how I've stayed in the business so long. I don't work a lot of overtime.
Yeah, and
But
the thing that I worry about, and what I coach people on when I'm in my coaching form for first responder resilience, is do your best not to have an overtime job or a second job, because like you said, we work those 24-hour shifts, so it gives us time to have those other jobs. And I don't know any first responder that doesn't have something else that they do just to make ends meet because of financial reasons. But one of the things that I always tell people, and I know that you'll agree to this, and I'm sure you coach them on this as well, is, especially when it comes to the mental health of the first responder, is not to have a second job in the medical industry. or another ambulance job or another police officer job or another firefighter job. That just doubles up your exposure to all the stuff that we're having problems with in our profession. And unfortunately we're seeing some very harsh numbers come out of that. We're doing our best nationally to try to change it, but it's a very steep uphill battle. I'm very confident we're going to get over it, because one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to start heading it off at the beginning, and I'm going to get my program of mental health resilience into the schools and into the academies. Like, do this, or or look at all these case studies of all of us going down, and some of us surviving and some of us not, because of it. So it's one of those things where having that overtime job, that's fine. I mean, especially people that are in our field, we're ADHD, we're very busybodies, we'd like to serve. That's one reason why I started my podcast business. I want to serve those who want to start podcasts and show them an easier way to do it. That's what I do as my business now, along with voiceover. And I'm trying to get out of swinging the hammer. I've got like one last job and I'm done with it. But I'm almost retired from handyman, at least for other people. I'll still work on my own place, but it's one of those things where having that concept of avoiding the overtime trap is so important, whether you're in the first responder world, whether you're in a nursing world where your overtime shift is another nursing job. There's other things that we can do within our professions, whether you're, an accountant, if you want a second job and you're an accountant, go cut lawns, go be a landscaper, do something different than get back into the thing that could possibly giving you stress. And like Chris here, she's not doing extra stuff. She used to do it, but now she's created a business. A lot of us first responders have secondary businesses, period. I'm in a Facebook group of first responders. I'll need to invite you to it. And he started it like less than a month ago. We've got over 3,500 people, entrepreneurs who are first responders. And it's an amazing group, because everybody has their own, some brick and mortar, some business, some online stuff, some mix where they can do both. And I just encourage everyone that if you've got a second job or want to try to do that overtime for stuff, dive deep into the second career or the second option for entrepreneurism, instead of just make ends meet by the easy way out. I can't remember who said it, but nothing great comes from easy. So if you have to take a hard step and become a financial planner and do the classes like Chris was talking about, then do that, because it's going to pay off dividends later on, and you're going to get more fulfillment out of it instead of adding to the stress that you already have in your full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, overtime is there and it's great, and then we do mandatory overtime. 48 hours a week is how my shift works. So I'm in mandatory work 8 hours. That's fine. But what you want it to do is, when I want something extra, so I'm going on vacation and I say, hey, you know what? I want to stay or have at a better place, or I want to have more excursions while we're out on our trip. I'll pick up an overtime shift. That's a reward. That's when it's a benefit. That's the benefit of this job. But if you're doing it just to pay your car payment or put food on the table, that's added stress to your life, right?
Right.
So how to get started? I offer 30 minutes so people can tell me, hey, what are your priorities? Some people that come to me, they are just looking to, hey, I make good money. I make decent money. I just don't know where it's going. Or I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck. Some people are in debt and they're like, I want to get out of debt. Other people are like, how do I actually start putting money away for my retirement? I feel like I don't have any money to put away, right? So we just take a look at that. So I give her 30 minutes. Let's talk about what are some of your goals, and what do you want to accomplish with your money? What does life look like? What does your best life look like living it? And having a little bit more around it so that you're being more conscious with the money that you're spending. I use the word budget just because it's an easy word, but budget is a bad word, right? People don't want to be put on a budget. Well, guess who makes the budget? You're making the budget. That means you pick the things that you want to spend your money on.
Right.
As a coach, I don't tell people how to spend their money. I help get out of them, what do they really want to be spending their money on? What are their goals? What are their priorities? What are their values? Because when you start shifting your money into those areas, you're more satisfied, like eating a good meal. You just feel more filled up, and life just feels more satisfied in general.
Exactly. And that word budget, that's one of the things it's very Dave Ramsey-esque, because they kick that in the butt right in the beginning. Listen, budget's a four-letter word for most people. Budget, now change your mentality and say budget is you telling your money where to go instead of your money telling you what you're going to do. So, that's where if you've not heard that concept before, that budgets are there for you to tell your money what to do and not the other way around. That's just a little something I remember from my own Dave Ramsey class that I took while I was a first responder and at the church right up the street and sometimes on duty. We had the truck there and I'm like, I'm going to go to class, but I can't call off. And they're like, oh, go to class. You're in a township. Just go.
Yeah.
So it was great. So real quick, I'm going to share Chris's website with you right here. So her website is beyondthenumbers.bn.com. You can sorry, it's cutting you off a little bit there. I have an extra wide.
That's all right.
Does it so but it's still, you get the concept. If you find her, this is her website. She's got some information on here and basically just stuff that gets you to know her a little bit better. Hopefully you've gotten to know her really well on the show today, and that you feel comfortable reaching out to Chris and getting some information that you need. Absolutely wonderful to have you on. I cannot wait to have you on the Elevate podcast, Chris, because I think we're going to really dive deep into what the mental health aspect of financials can be and the things that you've seen and how you've helped people in there. So I can't wait to have you on that one. If there's anything else that you want to say to people, I'll put all the information that you give me for your websites and your calendar, all that stuff in the show notes, of course. But if there's anything else you want to tell the audience, if not, we can wrap this up and get on about our days.
Well, I just want to thank you for giving me a voice, giving me a place to share my story and what I'm doing to help other first responders. And like I said, I like working with our people because I probably should come with a warning label. They understand my language. We understand all the details of things and down to the nitty gritty and being bold and concise. And I just am really happy to be here to be able to help everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And as always, everybody that's watching this, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. If you heard something that as of interest to you, dive back into the episode. You can go to my podcast website and do a search for if you remember something you want to hear more about, you can do the actual search for it, and you can find exactly what she was talking about or I was talking about in the episode. So all that stuff will be in the links below for that. Always want to make sure that anybody listening to this and who are entrepreneurs, the Ignition Path podcast is put together specifically to share the entrepreneurial path. Now, with that being said, I also have a service where my superpower, where Chris's superpower is the financial side of things, my superpower is getting people started and growing their business on podcasts. So if you're listening to this and you think that you've heard of podcasts to grow your business but want to know more, don't hesitate. I'll have a link in the thing. Search my name. You cannot not find me. You type my name properly or even improperly when it comes to Goodknight and the way I spell it. I have both domains, both the bad way to spell it and the good way to spell it, and you'll find me. So reach out to me. We can have once again, I do a free consultation as well about starting a podcast for your business and what that does for you. And of course, Chris's services and what she can offer you in that free 30-minute will definitely help you out. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Chris, thank you so much again, and have a great and wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.